everyone. My name is Arriale Starbird. I'm a holistic health and fitness coach. This is the Spirit Warrior Wisdom Podcast, where we discuss the application of martial arts philosophy and military strategy in pro-social ways to move our civilization towards enlightenment. Today, I have a very interesting guest who has a profound healing story to share. She's a born-again Christian prayer warrior. Her mission is to be in the spiritual battle and to help very sick people become well again. Dorinda Smith, known online as the Autoimmune Geek. She has a master's in immunology and environmental toxicology from Virginia Tech. She also has a PhD in autoimmunity from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. But 13 years into her career as a research scientist, Dori suffered major health crisis. She developed 7 autoimmune diseases of her own. And this crisis is actually what propelled her into this path of enlightenment on her hero's journey. So hello, Dori, how are you today?
Hey, how are you doing, Ariel?
Doing very good. Is this a fair introduction for you?
That's a fair introduction for me.
Excellent. I would love for you to share just a little more about what's happening with your healing journey today. Where are you with your health and wellness?
Well, even my own allopathic doctor, my own conventional doctor, rheumatologist, they're really stunned that I was able to get to a place where they consider me about 95% healed. And I think that's probably fair. Um, the it's not about perfection. None of us are ever perfect, right? And so still having to work on your health a little bit is actually a good thing. Yeah,
Right.
so I'm there. I feel great. I'm bringing it every day.
And that's what matters. It's how you feel and how you're able to be productive. And because we're never finished, we're all working on something. Everybody's working. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be here, right?
Exactly.
So you mentioned like the holistic and the allopathic, and I think that's really important. I want to explain to the viewers because I meet a lot of people. I'm in New York. It's very populated. I meet all kinds of people, and for the most part, people don't know the difference. They don't really understand what holistic is. They think it's like a word that they've seen online, but they don't really know what it means. So I want to explain and break it down, baby steps. So and when they go to a conventional doctor, they think and they're told they're going to a traditional doctor. So that's
Mm.
not true. Actually, what they're going to is an allopathic doctor. It's the conventional system is the allopathic medicine, and it's very new. It doesn't actually have traditions yet. In the perspective of history, it's brand new. It's a baby. Traditional medicine is what my great grandmothers practiced, like folk medicine, shamanic medicine, herbs and roots, anything that has to do with using nature as medicine, as well as faith medicine or turning to God and our higher power, hands-on healing. All of that is very traditional. It's in pretty much all the sacred texts of the world. And that is the most accurate technical meaning of the word traditional. It's thousands or even millions of years old. It's if people have read that book 1984, there was a way to change language, and it's this new speak practice of changing language and calling things that are kind of erasing what is really traditional medicine and not giving it a name, pretending it doesn't exist, and then taking conventional and calling that traditional. That's a new speak way of changing language, and therefore controlling people's minds to make a choice they didn't even realize they made. So a lot of people end up subscribing to the conventional allopathic medicine and they don't even know what they subscribe to. It's all by default. And so they
Yeah.
never end up hearing about things like holistic, naturopathic, osteopathic, Vedic, chiropractic, natural, or integrative medicine. They don't really know what those words mean or what the difference between all that. But I would love for you to explain a little bit, what is holistic medicine to you as a researcher and scientist in the field?
Yeah, and I love the way you set that up because that's exactly right. And I would refer people to a couple of different books that they can read. And you guys can, if you've got a pencil and piece of paper, you can write this down or you can look it up online. Um, Dr. Mark Hyman has an amazing book called Food Fix. And if you want to learn all about the differences and how our conventional medicine system got started back in the 1940s, right? It's just that young. It really is. And you want to know all the little nitty-gritty details about that, I would definitely recommend reading Food Fix. Also, um, Callie Means is an up-and-coming figure, and a lot of people probably already know who he is. He's on all the news programs, any podcast about health, he's on it. Him and his sister, Casey Means, who is a doctor. And look up Callie Means, look up Casey Means, and just start watching their videos. And you will see there is so much absolute corruption in our conventional medical system. And it is about power, it is about money, it involves our food system, our agricultural system, it involves the pharmaceutical industry, it involves a lot of things. And when we start talking about this, it's real easy for people to shut down and think, oh, that's just conspiracy theory. And the truth is, it's really not. The truth is what the truth is. And it's time for us all to open our eyes and realize that we're not missing 10 different medications by the time we're 50 years old. That is not normal, but yet it is in westernized nations. That is very normal for us to be on anywhere from, 7 to 10 different medications by the time we're 50 years old. That should not be. That should not be. And it's just time for us to all open our eyes. And so I would definitely recommend going back to those books. And got a pretty cool slide I can share with you that really shows the difference. So this is an article that came out of Forbes, and it's looking at precision health, which is really traditional medicine coming back, right? But also using the latest science to discover why traditional medicine actually did work for thousands and thousands of years. It worked beautifully. And now we have even more science. Science has really exploded exponentially to show us why the herbs worked, why the Chinese medicine, the Ayurvedic medicine, the natural medicine, the foods, just making sure that we ate decent, wholesome foods, just making sure that we got enough sleep at night, just making all those things that are inherent to health. Now we know scientifically why they worked and why they will still work better for people today if we can just get out of that whole mindset of, oh no, we just have to go to our regular doctor, have our 10-minute appointment, let him write a prescription, and it's all about a pill for an ill. That's crazy if you really think about it. No, your health is way more than some pharmaceutical pill that is actually causing more cellular damage on the back end than it is healing.
That's right. And I would love for you to talk a little more about that. Like, for example, a little while ago, this Ozempic drug was all the craze, and people were just.
It still is.
Yeah, it still is. And then I saw this research, and I knew it was not going to be good, but I was waiting, the science to be revealed. And then I saw articles how, yes, it helps you to lose the weight because it reduces some fat, but it also reduces muscle, which means it accelerates aging. And when you get off the drug, you get all the fat back, but it's very hard to build that muscle back up.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's
an absolute mess. But look at how much money has been made on that drug. And isn't it interesting? And when you guys go and you look at the videos by Callie and Casey Means, they talk about that a lot. And they talk about the fact that the drug is actually sold out of Europe and created in Europe, but Europe will not let it be sold there. That's how dangerous it is. Okay. And so, it's all about people wanting that quick fix to lose the weight right now. And of course, so many doctors jumped on board and said, oh, yes, as long as people lose weight, they're going to be healthier. That's just not true scientifically at the cellular level, at the genetic level. That is just not scientifically true. But if the pharmaceutical company is going to make a lot of money off of this, okay, There you go. And
And
so
when we
people just
say
need to open their eyes.
that's right. And when we say a lot of money, I think people don't realize just how much, because obviously, like holistic doctors, well, we make some money too, but I barely, like, I'm not trying to make a lot of profit. When we say the pharmaceuticals make money, it's like 3,000, 30, between 3 and 10 and 30,000% markup on those drugs. It's like a massive amounts of profit that is like unbelievable if people really realize what those numbers are. That
Right.
it could be pennies to produce it, but they make, a lot,
Yeah.
some people spend several thousand on their drug prescription.
Yes. Yes. And it's a trillion with a T,
Yeah.
not billion with a B, which is bad enough. It's a trillion with a T industry that is the number one lobbyist of our United States government. So they control everything because of the amount of money that they have. So it's not just about money, it's about power. They control what's taught in the medical schools, even. And so what we have a whole complete paradigm of like my own corrupted mindset coming out of school was that, oh, natural medicine, oh, none of that stuff is real. It doesn't work. It's just woo woo. It's just old wives' tales. And, it's just Chinese medicine. Oh my goodness, it's so beneath pharmaceuticals, right?
It's primitive, it's outdated.
Exactly. And so that is the mindset that I was basically brainwashed in, right? And that's our society's mindset that we're all basically brainwashed in because this is the system that we were born into. But the truth is, and that's why I've got this Forbes article up on the screen, I'm going back to what we call precision health now, is really um, all of the ancient wisdom of healing and herbs and eating wholesome, nutritious foods, sleeping properly, taking care of our bodies, exercising, and then all of the different plants and herbs that the Lord has given us in order to help us heal, right? Um, all of that comes in with the latest science. And we do still, even though the pharmaceutical industry is very much in control, we still do have a lot of excellent science that's coming out from all around the world, and even places like Harvard and our own medical facilities. And we are learning that we can take all of that and help us to have much greater health. And that's the bottom line. We all want to have much better health. We all want to have beautiful energy. We don't want to have all of these chronic illnesses that seem normal now, like diabetes in children, or Alzheimer's disease in old age, or heart disease by the time you reach your 40s, 50s, and 60s. That is not normal. Or having joint issues, or just pain as you age, or less mental clarity as you age. None of that is normal, and it doesn't have to be. It just doesn't. And so what's happening now that is so exciting is that we're coming full circle, and we're coming back around. And now, because of all the science, now precision health is the number one investment vehicle for the billionaires of the world, because they all want to live healthy, beautiful lives too, right? What's the point of having lots of money if you can't enjoy your life?
And I think
Okay.
there's
And
more to it
so,
because it is a spiritual battle. We're going to get into it a little bit, but I think it's also because they realize what you can't beat, you got to join. We are powerful. We have a lot of protection here, and I think eventually, even though I'll mention this because it's really important, since the 80s, there's been a lot of assassinations of holistic doctors, and I believe it's Erin. I don't know if her name is Erin Elizabeth, but she's the wife or girlfriend of Dr. McCullough. She's been tracking a lot of those names.
yes.
It's a lot of names. People should look that up. They should know the names of all these doctors and the incredible research they did. And still we're here. We're doing all this. And actually the opposite, the field is attracting warriors because we realize that we need this. And this is why I got attracted to this field, because I'm a warrior. I'm like, this is where the battle is at. So that's where God put me to fight this battle. And I know it's a fight to the death. And I'm just, I sort of surrendered to whatever God wants from me. But I think these billionaires, they realize that, okay, if we can't beat this movement, these forces, we have no choice. We have to join. But as
Well,
long
and the other part of it too is that so many doctors, and I'm just another one of the many different scientists or doctors in the world who they exhausted everything. I mean, like, I've been trained at the highest level in autoimmune disease, and yet when I developed my own autoimmune disease, there was no hope. There was absolutely no hope. All I had to do was just live on my pharmaceuticals and have a reduced lifespan. And that was the only hope that I was given in the conventional paradigm, in the allopathic paradigm. That was the only hope I was given, even though I had the most education that you can get in my field of study. And what I found,
and you believed them, you trusted them.
and I trusted that $200,000 worth of education. Of course, I'm going to trust that, right? But what was actually true, and this is what changes everyone, what was actually true was something completely different, that I could heal, and I did heal, but I had to step outside of the conventional allopathic model. I had to step away from the pharmaceuticals. And I could still use some of them. It's not that they're all bad, okay? But in order for me to truly heal at the cellular level, at the genetic level, at the spiritual level, I had to actually go a completely different route, and it worked. And that's what we're all finding, is that it does work. It is beautiful. It is amazing. We all just have to be willing to open our eyes and see that there is a better way.
So let me ask you this. So during one of your articles, you said the following: fighting for the truth of the new science, this precision science, holistic precision science, to be accepted is a very real spiritual battle. And
Yes,
we
it is.
fight to open the eyes of those who do not know these new scientific discoveries so they can be
Yes.
set free to live the lives that God created them for without the limitations of severe chronic illness. Why is it a spiritual battle to practice holistic medicine nowadays?
Holy smokes. Yeah. I mean, not a day goes by that I'm not called a snake oil salesman. Not a day goes by that I'm not called a liar, that I'm not called, oh, someone who's just trying to pull the wool over people's eyes in order to make a ton of money. And yeah, anyone's welcome to come out and look at where I live on a goat farm on 8 acres. Right? I mean, it's none of that is true. We are fighting a very real spiritual battle for truth in medicine. And the truth is much bigger than the pharmaceutical industry wants us to know, right?
And you have really
And
strong faith. So you have support, internal resources and support, but you found it over time. And it seems to me that you found it through your health battle. It led you to God.
yes,
I don't know if you were spiritual before, but you became as a result, right? So can you
I
talk a little
was.
can you talk a little more about that? How you became more spiritual and how your spirituality and your faith helps you to win this battle?
Yeah, well, um, I was a born again Christian before I got sick. And that's another battle with my own daughter's health issues as well. But then going through the whole process of, I basically, my entire life was turned upside down when I got my diagnoses, when I started becoming sick, because I was 13 years into my career. I had finished my master's degree. I was almost done. I had finished all of the coursework and most of the research for my PhD. I mean, I was there. I was working while I was doing my PhD. So I wasn't just in school all that time. I was working the entire time. And so um, by the time I started developing symptoms of autoimmune disease, it literally tore it just completely tore my life apart. Um, I went from being, that superwoman that is just, achieving and, type A, typical control freak, strong Christian, just, out bringing it in the world, right? And when you're faced with a severe illness, yeah, you hit a brick wall. You do. You hit a brick wall, and a lot of things go wrong. Like my husband couldn't tolerate the fact that our whole lives changed. Instead of him being married to a scientist who made great money, right? Now he's married to a woman who is sick all the time, sitting on the couch taking, you know, a combination of 12 to 20 different pharmaceutical medications every day just to get through the day,
And not
right?
getting better, right? And just
And
taking all
not getting
that.
better and dying and slowly dying, right? Yeah, that was a complete paradigm shift for him and what his life was going to be
And
like
he was
too. And
probably
so
and he was probably completely sold on the conventional system too, right? Which is what
exactly,
he probably was like, why
exactly.
it's not working? He was probably looking at you. You're the doctor. You're supposed to figure this out. Right? Was he? Does it have that? Did he have that attitude?
Yeah, and the sad thing is that still today, conventional medicine, if you are diagnosed with any autoimmune disease, they will tell you this is incurable.
That's
Period.
right.
Period.
That's right.
There are no options for you except
Go home and
we
die.
help you to be more comfortable by helping you with your symptoms,
Right.
but we do not know the root cause. That's according to conventional medicine. They don't believe they know the root causes. They don't believe they know the whys. They call it idiopathic, which means they don't know why it happens. Okay. On the scientific side, on the precision health side, yes, we do know what the root causes are. Yes, we do know. And yes, we can fix them. And yes, you can help people to essentially be mostly healed or mostly cured, or at least manage it to a point where you're no longer just dying and living on pharmaceuticals. You're actually living your life and you're living out the purpose that God created you for.
That makes
Yeah.
total sense to me. And so I'm wondering, did your husband or ex-husband, did he ever move along with you on the journey of becoming holistic, or he just
Oh no.
his own way?
No, no, no. No, he left right before I got my major diagnosis. We went for a period of about 3 years where I was undiagnosed, which is very, very common in autoimmune disease, where your body is completely falling apart, and you can no longer function very well in your normal day-to-day life. But yet the doctors cannot find out why, and they have not yet diagnosed you. And this is very, very common for people with autoimmune diseases to be in that undiagnosed state for anywhere from 3 to 7 years on average. And that's a long time for your family and your friends and everyone around you to look at you like, well, the doctor can't find anything wrong with you, so therefore it must all be in your head.
That's right. And
It
they give you,
must be
and
a
then they also,
mental illness.
that's right. And then they also give you medications for the mind. Yeah, psychiatric. That's right.
Exactly. Exactly. When that's not true at all.
Right.
But you're kind of losing your own mind because you know that your
Well, when
body
you're
is falling apart
gaslit,
and you've got multiple symptoms, but yet no one's listening to you and trying, no
that's
one is really finding the answer.
and it's more women than men. Men can develop autoimmune too, but in my experience, it's a lot of women, and they're constantly gaslit. And unfortunately, a lot of women don't have the backbone to fight against it. They just believe when they're being gaslit, and they fall for it. And they take the meds for the brain, and they take the meds for whatever, and then they gain a lot of weight, and they're miserable, and they
Yes.
think it's all their fault.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's a whole other topic that we could spend about 5 hours on because usually when women and men too But when women come to me, by the time they finally get to someone like me who practices precision health, they have already been through, anywhere from 5 to 10 different specialists. They've already been sent to the psychiatrist. They've already, right? And if they're lucky enough to get a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease, at least they have that. But then they've got so many medications that then they're brainwashed into thinking that there's nothing that they can do,
And another thing that also
And
happens that's really sad is, see, the body can recover on its own if the organs are there. But a lot of times what happens is they get all these different organs removed. Oh, gallbladder removed, this removed, cut hysterectomy, cut the breast out, cut everything out. Then you're all chopped up. It's much harder to heal when you don't have the organs, because you need.
correct.
Yeah, it's very sad, actually.
Correct. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's very sad. And I'm sure that, maybe 10, 20 years from now, we're going to look back because the science is exploding exponentially and the truth is being told. And so, there is going to come a time where we look back and we say, oh my gosh, that was so Neanderthal, the way we practiced medicine. And, and now we've come back full circle to, the way we're supposed to be taking care of
And
our
with
health.
all
And
that
that's
said, I don't want people to think that they don't have any power, because it ultimately it's their free choice to listen and to take the medications or not, to do the surgery or not. They're enabling the medical abuse to happen. They don't realize that it is, but start to critically think, start to research. Don't just believe whatever you're told, because you don't have to do any of these things. People end up doing them because they don't know better. Well, get to know better, because it's
get to
ultimately.
know better. Exactly. And that's the problem. That, going back to what you said, the spiritual battle is that most people are so ingrained in our conventional paradigm that they will not look at anything else. They believe whatever their doctor says. They believe that that is all there is. And if you've got that belief, there is nothing else. There is nothing else. And therefore you become deceived. And that is, when you get into the whole spiritual battle, of course, good versus evil. Evil is always trying to get us to be deceived so that we cannot live out the purpose that God created us for. That is the whole reason why we're here on this earth. And we are constantly being bombarded with deceit in order to keep us from being everything we were created to be. And so our entire conventional medical system, and well, okay, let me say this. There are good things in it. There are things that save people's lives. There are good things in it. But when it comes to chronic illness, when it comes to things like heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, metabolic disorder, Alzheimer's, even things like autism, okay? All of these things are preventable, reversible diseases. And we have to step up, open our eyes, and be willing to learn that, yes, they are preventable and reversible, that we don't have to walk down that road.
That's the main issue that we're
Okay.
having. Yeah, obviously, if someone is having a ruptured colon, yeah, they probably at that point need surgery. But the whole point we're making is
Hello.
all of that could have been prevented. That didn't need to happen. And it was the
Yes.
system that caused the rupture by its neglect and by misinformation.
Great.
And had the person been on a healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, herbs and supplements, and working out, it's the fact that the conventional system utterly fails to prevent any of these things.
Agree.
That's the problem we're having. So,
Yeah.
what made you switch from the conventional thinking about medicine to holistic worldview? What was the one critical point that snapped you out of the deception?
Huh. It was actually, it was God, to be quite honest. I was 14 years into my disability and I was completely no longer a scientist. Well, I've always been a scientist, but I was not a practicing scientist at that time. I had already been on disability for 14 years. Um, you know, completely broke, just living as a sick person, waiting to die, living on my pharmaceuticals all this time. And I was told that I probably had an average of 10 years to live because I did have 7 different diagnosed autoimmune diseases, and a couple of them were very severe, scleroderma and lupus. And um, I was in about year 14. So I had lasted longer than what they said I should last. And I was in the middle of a very severe flare where I had never been that sick. And I've been in and out of the hospital. I've been very, very, very ill, but I was never that sick. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end. And I actually collapsed one day. And as I collapsed, I just cried out to the Lord and I just said, please don't take me yet because I'm still raising my granddaughter and she needs me. I'm all she's got. And if I'm a scientist, for crying out loud. I mean, that's literally what I said to him as I was laying on the floor. I said, I'm a scientist. If there's anything I've missed, please show me. And he actually did. It was, um, it was just the Lord answering a prayer, a very desperate, pleading prayer for one little person, right? And he did. He answered that prayer, and it took me a while to get up off the floor and get back into my bed. And when I finally did, my TV was right there, and there was a video. There was a YouTube video, and it said scleroderma, which was my main diagnosis. It said scleroderma and functional medicine. And right away, my brain went, what is this functional medicine? What is this? I mean, and here I am, typical arrogant, brainwashed scientist, right? I was not going to buy into that. And I just, whatever. And I just passed it by. But the Lord didn't let me. For about an hour, and I was just kind of laying there, flipping through the channels, and the Lord did not let it go. And I felt very strongly that he was telling me, go back and watch that video. And I finally did. And when I did, I realized that it was all exactly what someone like me, an arrogant scientist, needed to see in order to be convinced that, oh, maybe there is something that you missed. Oh, maybe you're not quite as smart as you thought you were. Maybe there is something else. And maybe you need to be humbled a little bit. And maybe you need to look outside of everything that you were taught. Maybe there is something else. And so that's basically what it was. It showed me a bunch of peer-reviewed science that is outside of conventional medicine. And so it took me another couple of months of just laying in bed and doing my own, what scientists do. We do a meta-analysis. We look at all the different data from all around the world and we pull it all together, and then we make assumptions of what the truth may be based on everything that we see, based on the evidence. That's what a meta-analysis is. And so that's what I did. It took me a couple of months to do it, and I basically did it from my bed. And what I learned through that process was that, oh, yes, there's a lot more out there that conventional medicine is not even looking at, is not even using yet, is not doing anything about. And so I started practicing some of these different things that they talk about, like working on your gut health and eating a different diet and getting off of inflammatory foods, getting off of sugars, getting off of all those things. And lo and behold, I started noticing that my energy was getting better. And then I started noticing that some of my symptoms were getting better. And then I got smart and decided to get help because I realized that I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. I'm not the be all end all. I don't have all the knowledge. And so I started seeking out other functional and precision health people and pulled together a team of people to help me. And then it was between their knowledge and my own research that I was able to get as well as I am today. And so that's why I do what I do, and I honestly know there's no doubt in my mind that God orchestrated all of this from even from the time I was a little girl, when I was that weird geek that always had to learn all the little nitty-gritty details on the molecular level, right? I mean, I was the weirdo, okay? Having that kind of a brain, then being able to go through college. I was the first in my family to go through college at that level, at that high level, which was incredible on its own. I don't come from a rich family. So the Lord orchestrated that. Then the Lord allowed me to get all of the experience while I was going through school. Then he allowed me to get sick, right? Then he allowed me to live in the hell, you know, in the hell of the sickness and all of the emotions and all of the trauma, the losing your husband, the children being traumatized by you being carted off to the hospital all the time, just all of that, all of the emotional and the all of that, and then being taught how to do it a different way. And then walking through, it took me a good 2 to 3 years to get my health back. So it was not a quick fix. It was a lot of work, a lot of learning, a lot of um, changing my own mindsets and growing in the Lord at the same time, growing in trusting the Lord and the journey that He was taking me on. Because now I know this was what He created me for, is to help other people to feel better. And I had to go through it that way in order for me to be able to do what I do today. Right. And so
That makes total sense. You said
and
something
it's
very,
beautiful. It was hard, but it's beautiful.
yeah, in the end, it's a very beautiful journey. In the beginning,
Yeah.
it's like that saying, no mud, no lotus. Initially, you start with the mud and you're just like stuck in the mud and you're fighting with the mud, but eventually the lotus comes out and it's really beautiful. Uh,
Yeah.
but you said something really important that I want to bring people's attention to, that you started to do the peer review research into that was done, that's a holistic research. Because a lot of times when people think, well, wait a minute, if it's not conventional, they imagine like a gypsy with coffee beans. It's like, no, 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 no. There's actual scientists doing real research in a lab. It's just you haven't for some reason heard about it, but it's like
Oh yeah.
it's like a parallel medicine. It's not, in a village somewhere,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
but where barefoot people do primitive surgeries. It's the holistic medicine is very developed. It's very advanced. It's
Yeah.
more advanced than the conventional. It's that for whatever reason, for a long time, that's not what was, how should I put it? That's not what the convention latched onto, because it's I think, this is my opinion, because the holistic medicine is more person centric. It allows the person to be empowered in their journey, whereas the conventional medicine, it empowers the doctor to have all the control, and the person loses all power basically, and that perpetuates that system. It's a kind of an abusive system. Whereas what by us educating the public and empowering them, they they take health into their own hands. They become the boss of their own reality, and
Exactly.
they go to their own higher power. Well, then I can't be a tyrant in that kind of situation. And the people who want to be tyrants don't like that, right? When we the people have the power, the tyrants don't like that. So that's why it's not. But things are changing, right? Things are changing. Hopefully they
Oh,
will.
massively.
Yeah.
Yes, things are changing, but we still have a lot of misinformation on the internet. Um, you've got good things on the internet, you've got absolute junk that is just not the truth at all on the internet.
Well, and now we
Um,
have a new problem. Since last year, there's a proliferation of AI created content. It's not necessarily that it's always wrong, but a lot of it is kind of shallow. It's SEO to the max. It will take first place on Google pages, but it's missing the human component. And it's like, well, but who is doing the research? Who is determining what is true and what's not? AI can't determine what's true and what isn't. It's pulling things that are already there. So we have this massive issue now where people like me are disappearing off of Google pages, and AI content is that looks good to a regular person. It looks, but it's missing soul. It's missing the point often. It's very shallow, and it can be derailed in the wrong direction because it's AI. It's designed to be programmed. It can be programmed to go in the wrong direction. So we have to bull by the horn and start to put better information, on the. And that's why I was saying, like, yeah, the powerful and the rich are getting involved, but we have to be the leaders. They can't be the leaders of this force because they're not. They clearly don't make necessarily good decisions when it comes to health. I mean, look at Bill Gates; he's not a healthy looking person. Like, so if you look at a lot of these people, they're not the model of health. Let's put it that way. So it's the people who are experts in health, who are doing it every day, who actually survived and healed their own stuff. We have to be the leaders in thought by our own experience. Not as tyrants, but as people who are sharing. Well, this works and this doesn't, and I know for sure because I was there. I know this is my experience. AI doesn't have that kind of an experience, and I think that's why people listen to shows like this, because there's a lot of people who are really sick and they don't know why they're sick, and they want to hear from other people who healed from these kinds of problems, and they want to know how we did it, and what motivates us to keep fighting the battle. It's very, very hard if you're sick for decades. It's very hard to keep fighting. One day I'll share my story too, but I also had a lot of health issues, but I'm a warrior. I'm stoic by nature. I just battled every day until I got healthy. But I can say for certain, like a weak-minded person wouldn't have done all the things I've done. They wouldn't even done a fraction. They would have just given up and maybe would have been dead.
Yeah, because it's easier. And it's so, especially when everything in our society is geared towards telling us that, well, you just need to accept that you have this cancer, or that you have this autoimmune disease, or that you have this heart disease, and you just need to stay on your medication. And really don't worry about your diet so much. I remember I had a rheumatologist, bless her heart. She thought she wasn't a bad person. She just believed the paradigm, and she said, you could change your diet, but it might only help you 5%, so why bother? Go ahead and enjoy your macaroni and cheese. That's exactly her words to me, and it was totally wrong information, deceiving information, but you see, she was deceived as well.
Absolutely. I see the way they're thinking is, we're going to die anyway, so you might as well just enjoy the last bit of your life.
Oh yes, and if I've heard even at church, right? And I've heard people say the craziest things, and that's one of them. It's, well, if I have to live my life without my macaroni and cheese, or without my my big bowl of ice cream every night, then life isn't worth living. And I used to say those same things myself. And once I realized that, wait a minute, I was completely deceived with everything that I was given at the grocery store. That's not food. Almost everything in your grocery store is not food. It's a food-like substance that is actually destroying the way your genes express and creating disease.
Absolutely.
But yet,
that it's not actually food. Food comes from
it's
nature.
not actually food. It's not actually food.
What food either grew out of the earth, it had a mother, so it's or it came from a tree. What we're buying in the store is basically like, it's usually made out of soy or some kind of plastic. It's actually a petroleum-based product. It's actually a pharmaceutical, because pharmaceuticals are petroleum-based plastics. So people are eating plastics and don't even realize it.
People are eating mostly junk and believing that it's healthy because of the marketing. And that's why you really do need to read The Food Fix by Mark Hyman, and you really do need to get into Callie and Casey Means information, so that you can really understand the depth of this. And even the vegetables, even the fruits and vegetables that do come from the ground or from trees, or even your good meats that do come from animals, most of that in the grocery store, the way it's been farmed, the way it's been raised, is still extremely unhealthy. And it's literally causing your cells to not have everything they need. Okay, that's the number one reason why we're sick, is because your cells don't have everything that they need to function properly. And the other side of the coin is your cells are overloaded with toxins, and they're overloaded with all the different toxins. And all you have to do is just walk through the grocery store, and I could show you that there are multiple toxins in almost everything there. And so what does that do to a person's mindset? I saw a meme the other day that was so telling. It was a lady laying on the floor in the grocery store, face down, just laying there, just, and the meme said, me, after I realized that there's nothing in the grocery store that I could eat and still be healthy.
Oh, I saw
Okay.
that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I felt like that before too. Yeah.
It's the truth. And so what does that do to our mindset when every restaurant we see as we drive down the road has got nothing but junk, when all of our grocery stores have nothing but junk, when our doctors are peddling pharmaceuticals that is actually making our genes express in a negative way and express disease long term? Right? What do we do with that? It's like we feel like we're overwhelmed with this huge battle, that there's no way we can win this battle. It's too big. There's too many things against us. And what our spiritual battle here is that, whoa, that's the mindset. That's the deceit. And it really looks like everything is stacked against you. But the truth is that you can do this. You can choose better foods. You can shop at a farmer's market. You can learn where your meat comes from, where your vegetables come from. You can choose, yeah, you can choose to buy food from sustainable agriculture, right? You can choose that. We have the internet, you can order this stuff from Amazon even. Okay, not that I'm, all about Amazon, because that can be corrupted too. But look, you can do this. And there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world like me and you who have gotten our health back. But yes, we have to live as what we call a healthy deviant. We don't live in the center of our societal norms. We live outside of those norms because we have to.
That's right.
But it works, and we're much happier people, and we're much more spiritually in tune. We're living in the truth. We're living in our God-given purpose. It's just better all the way around, right?
Absolutely better all the way around.
But actually show people the difference between, the allopathic conventional way and what precision health now offers us. If you'd like me to do that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So pretty straightforward, you've got this picture in front of you, and obviously people can see the pictorial difference here between, your dead trees and your dark highway on one side, and your bright, beautiful, alive highway on the other side. And I just have to make sure that I can see, because I am sitting outside and it's hard for me to see my screen. There we go. That's a little bit better. So the conventional way is a lot of old school dogmas that we've been raised with. It's symptom based. It's basically just trying to hit a symptom to make it feel better. It's big pharma funded and big pharma controlled. It's just trying to take care of your symptoms, but it's also creating more and more side effects in the process, because those pharmaceuticals are causing genetic and cellular damage. While they're helping one thing, they're screwing up 10 other pathways.
That's right. And sometimes the symptoms are worse than the original conditions.
Exactly. Often it's worse
by
than
design.
the original condition.
And people need to understand that's by design.
And I don't think that it's necessarily bad people. I think that it's a bigger spiritual picture.
Bigger
right?
Dark forces.
It's a bigger spiritual picture by design. It's the deceit by design, right? It causes cellular and genetic damage, tissue damage, brain damage, a lot of higher inflammation, that's the main reason why you're sick, is because your inflammation rises. You're labeled in this paradigm, right? You are not in control in this paradigm, right? You feel stuck. You feel at the mercy of your doctor and everything that they tell you. You're very much not in control. And you're told most of the time that this is incurable, or it's just the way it is. It's just old age. There's nothing you can do. Just accept it, right? And that puts people in a state of being confused about their own health and how they can help themselves feel better every day, right? And over time, you are definitely going to be worse living in this paradigm. Now, let's go over and let's look at the reality of what we can do using the new science along with the traditional, and the way you described traditional medicine. Okay, you're using new science that is actually proving the traditional medicine and the herbs and the good wholesome foods and the exercise and all of that to be true, right? Now you are focusing at your root causes rather than at the symptom level. Most of the time you can remove big pharma to a great extent. I was able to get off of all 20 of my medications that they had me on. Now, depending on what you've got, or if you've already had your thyroid ablated or whatever, you might still need some big pharma as you're healing. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get most of that out of the way. It's up leveling your energy because it's working at the mitochondrial level, which is where all the latest greatest science is right now. It's improving your brain function. It's enhancing your mood and giving you more joy. It's regenerating your cells. And actually, when we say cellular regeneration, we mean that we know what we can do scientifically now. You can actually age backward. And I know that people are going to want to turn it off right now as soon as I said that, because they're going to say, "Oh, that's crazy." It's not crazy. You can actually create brand new cells that function at a much higher, younger level. Okay. And you actually do age backward. It's a beautiful thing. Um, because you're creating new cells, new tissues that function better. And that's lowering your overall level of inflammation. And also, this new word that's out now called inflammaging, meaning how higher levels of inflammation cause faster aging. That is very true. And the billions of dollars that have been invested in precision health have proven that now. And that's in the areas of cellular regeneration and longevity and anti-aging. All of those latest scientific studies are proving this, that it's the more inflammation you have in your body, the more disease you have, the faster you age, the faster you die. So we want to change all that. We want to go to the genetic and the cellular level, work there, work at the root cause level, reverse our biological age, reduce our disease risk as we age, reduce our cancer risk, and create strength. And I don't just mean physical muscle strength or tissue strength. I mean power, true spiritual power. When you learn that you can take control of your own health and you are no longer at the just the control of looking at those pharmaceutical bottles or running to your doctor with every new symptom that you have because you're so scared. um I cannot even begin to tell you how life changes. And it's just living on a much higher spiritual level where you're just a happier person. You're so much more in control of your life. And this is where you really want to be. You want to be living in that place. I always bring it back around whenever I'm talking to all of us are created to live in our God-given purpose. That's where we're supposed to be living. We're not supposed to be living in fear. We're not supposed to be living in constant symptoms, in just constant stress. That's not how God created us to live. And the more we can get control of the fear, the symptoms, the stress, the craziness, the worrying about other people's feelings, and all of that craziness, right? The more we can get above all of that, the happier, the more creative our lives are. And we actually do better work in the world when we're living in that place. And so we want to all get as much in that place as we possibly can. And not that we can ever be perfect at it, because we can't. And, let's face it, there are some disease processes that have just gone on for so long that you might only get 50% better, or you might only get 70% better. But is that living in a higher spiritual purpose? Is that worth it? And I would say yes.
Yeah, it is for me. Let me ask you this question, because I love this picture. It's so good to meditate on, because it shows how when you are healthy, your world is different. And when you're
Your
unhealthy,
whole life is different.
very, typically, if you're very unhealthy, so is your family. Like something, because you're eating the same stuff, you're in the same environment. So what and I work with clients too, and very often I've seen this. This is where the rubber meets the road. When people start to get well, they often lose their family and friends, because the family and friends are not going with them. And very often healing becomes a very lonely journey. They're alone for a while. Well, they have God, right? But there's not really anyone sojourning with them, because they're going through. That's kind of the nature of a crisis, a healing crisis, or any kind of crisis. Is you go through it alone. Other people, even if you have friends and family around you, they're not going through the crisis with you. And when you come out on the other side, typically you're in such different areas mentally and spiritually, you don't really have much in common anymore. Even if they're your biological family, you're just so different. And very often people who heal, they find a new tribe of like-minded people who also healed and understand what it's like to have gone through this. But my question to you is, how difficult was it for you to bring people with you, your friends and family, on this journey? Or were you not able to?
I was not able to, for the most part. Yeah. Um, my sister in Christ, her name is Kristen, and we met at church. We're not biological sisters. We met in church, and she asked me to come live with her after her husband died of severe autoimmune disease, and she is a caretaker at heart. And so in the beginning of my healing journey, and this was after my husband had left and I had been suffering for some time, we met, and she asked me to move in with her, because she had this big house and she was alone, and she wanted to help me. And she could feel that her own spiritual journey, she just felt like God put us together so she could help me. And at that point, we thought that, I'm just dying, right? And I'm taking care of my granddaughter, so she's helping me with that. And we just assumed, we believed what we were told, and we just assumed that 10 years down the line I'd be dead and she'd be helping to raise Jana, and that was going to be life. She was really the only person that, for whatever reason, God just created her with that heart, that um that even though she had never been through that kind of illness herself, she just had a caretaker's heart. And she was really the only one who stuck by me. I lost a church. I actually left an entire church. I basically lost really a whole church community, because most of the people there, not everyone, but most of the people there just didn't get it. I mean, even from the pastor on down, um, they would see me when I was feeling well, when all my medication was working, and when I could actually, look like a normal person on the outside, even though a lot of that was a little fake because I wasn't going to show all of the symptoms and everything that was going on in my body. Um, and so when they did see me, they saw me looking fairly normal. So they would say things like, well, you look good to me. You look normal to me. And of course, the whole, after years of people saying things like that, you realize that they don't really believe that you have anything really wrong with you when you have an autoimmune disease. Now, if you were to go into church and say, hey, everybody, please pray for me. I was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Everyone in the church would start making you meals. They would start rallying around you. They would have prayer vigils for you. You'd get every little bit of love and attention that you need from a community. When you say to any community, really, and I'm not just saying a church community, because hey, I love my Christian brothers and sisters, but this is true across the board. People don't understand chronic illness. They don't understand that it is most of the time a long-term daily battle with anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 different symptoms a day, that it's a constant roller coaster ride on the physical level, on the emotional level, on the spiritual level. They have no clue what you're going through unless they've been there. And they tend to be extremely ignorant about it, and they tend to be extremely judgmental about it. And they tend to go to that place of, well, you must just be a whip
Do
as
you
a
think it's
person.
because with a cancer, like if there's a tumor, you can see the tumor in a picture? But with an
Yeah.
autoimmune, you can't necessarily see, you don't see a broken bone or a tumor or a bruise. It's not a mental illness. You don't necessarily see dysfunction. Uh, it's how awful you feel and how it impedes you. But they're like, well, maybe you're making it up, or maybe you're just
Yeah,
trying to get attention. Maybe you're
exactly.
creating drama, right?
Exactly. Maybe you're just all about the drama, or I actually had my own pastor say to me, and this was shortly after that I left the church, because he actually said to me, well, Dory, you know, if you're a scientist, if you're a scientist, why don't you just go back to work? He didn't get it. He honestly did not get it. A 12-hour average day for a scientist is not something that a person who's suffering from 7 autoimmune diseases can handle. You can barely get up and get yourself showered without 20 different medications, without going and being at the top of your game as a PhD level scientist for 12 hours a day. And he did not get that,
Well, I think it's a
you
lot
know?
like similarly, and I think it's connected. It's got to be connected. People who've had a lot of emotional trauma, that too. Oh, just get over it. They don't. People don't really. Well, just do therapy, like, or just take a medication and just get going. Like get with the program. They don't understand how
Yeah.
that can, especially some of the like really severe emotional trauma, can impede a person for decades, in all kinds of ways that they're not necessarily. And I think it is connected because the autoimmune, the emotions and physical manifestation of symptoms can be related. And that's why, like in traditional Chinese medicine, they know that organs store emotions. And if you've had emotional trauma, you'll have
Mm,
damage organ, and eventually
sure.
you'll have disease in those organs. And
Yeah.
there's been some correlation between autoimmune and emotional trauma from the past. And when you
Yeah.
heal trauma, some of the autoimmune stuff resolves too. Well, all of that is all mysterious, and people don't get it. And I think they don't
Not
want to.
mysterious though. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like with the latest science and precision health now, we know what's causing the damage. And we know that part of it is the trauma. Trauma does create higher levels of inflammation and much higher levels of inflammation in your cells. And so that's proven psychological science. And so we know that the more inflammation you have, the sicker you are, the more damaged, the less functioning your cells are. And so therefore, yes, trauma is part of it. Also, the toxins that we're exposed to is part of it. Also, the cellular deficiencies that we have. If your cells don't have everything they need, how are they supposed to do the job?
And by
Right.
the
And
way,
when you put,
that's a very good point. By the way, a lot of people don't think of heavy metal toxicity or being poisoned by GMOs and antibiotics as trauma, but actually it is. It's
it
trauma to
is,
organs, it's trauma to your body,
yes,
even though it's not
yes,
at an emotional level, it's at a physical level, but it is. So I think people need to like open their mind about what trauma means because they're
yeah,
thinking somebody assaulted you or somebody hit you or you got bullied. That's trauma, and it is, but that's just one type. There's being constantly chronically poisoned by GMOs and heavy metals and vaccines
right.
and all that too creates trauma. And
Right.
that
Or for like our entire lives, we're eating things like corn oil and vegetable oil because society said this is what's better for you when it really wasn't. Or we're all eating margarine instead of butter when it's really completely tearing apart our cell membranes. Now, your cell membrane is where like everything happens. It's where all the receptors are. It's where all the cellular communication happens, right? If you don't have good cell membranes, you will have things like ALS and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease, okay? And every other disease in between, and heart disease and diabetes, and right? Um, and we ate like that, believing as a society, as human beings, we ate like that, thinking that that was the right thing to do. We were poisoning ourselves,
exactly
basically.
exactly right.
And
And
now we've got to walk all that back. And thank God our bodies are amazing. And as soon as you start putting the good oils in and you start giving up all that, that crazy, you know, food that is not really food, food like substances, right? As soon as you start giving that up and you start really putting in the good food, it's just amazing the cellular regeneration that does occur. And the genetic manipulation that you can do simply by changing your diet and by changing your lifestyle is absolutely incredible. That's actually the biggest scientific explosion that has happened in the last 20 years, is that we learned that your genes, you have control over the way they express from moment to moment to moment. And a good 90 to 95% of the way your genes express is totally under your control just by the choices that you make every day. And people don't know that. People still think, well, my mom had hypothyroidism, and so therefore I will too. And it's absolutely not true.
you're absolutely right. And I think another thing that people think without realizing that they think this is disease is on or off. They're sick or you're healthy. They don't realize that it's more like a dimmer, and you can be sick to a
It's a
degree
gradient.
or healthy to a degree.
Exactly.
And another thing that
Exactly.
happens is this chronic poisoning. It's, for example, affecting the fetuses. So the fetuses are becoming
Yes.
smaller. So they're
Yeah.
smaller brains, smaller hearts, smaller organs. That means they don't function optimally. So yes, then the child is born and they seem to be functioning, but everything is not functioning optimally. It's not total health. There is some impedance, and the IQ doesn't develop as high as it could be. Well, that's not good. And then it just goes downhill from there, because then that child will, has some damaged DNA. And then if the poisoning continues, then when the child grows up, has their own child, that child might be smaller still. And so
Correct.
we are depleting our genetic wealth, and we're basically turning off healthy genes that spell health, right, and turning on diseased genes without really realizing that we're doing it. It's like it's slow motion. It's a
Yes.
slow
Yes.
motion
And
crash.
yeah,
Slow motion
you're
crash.
exactly right. And these are the toxicological studies. So I'm an immunotoxicologist. And so even when I was back in school, we were taught, we could see the very real evidence. There's no, I mean, it's the evidence is absolutely undeniable that over the course of generations, since we started changing the way we ate back in the 1930s and 40s, and we started having packaged meals and processed things, and we started becoming more exposed to plastics and toxins of all different kinds, and herbicides and pesticides and glyphosate and just all this craziness, right? What has happened with each successive generation, our chronic illness levels across the board, all different kinds of chronic illness, have risen exponentially, and our genetic SNPs, our little mutations, right? The genetic mutations have gotten more and more and more with each successive generation that passes. And so what is cool about that, because it sounds, when I say that, it sounds, that can bring a lot of fear into people's lives just by me saying that, because it seems like, oh my gosh, we've been doing this for 80 years now, and we've totally screwed up our genetics with each successive generation. Yes, while that is true, we have caused a lot of genetic variation that is in a very negative way. The other side of that coin, and this is the hope, and this is how people like me heal, and this is how people like you heal, is that we can look at those different genetic variations and we can go, oh, but as long as we know they're there, we can take control and we can do something about it. And I'll give you a perfect example. It's a very easy example. I use this all the time. Our vitamin D genes over the course of the last, 80 years or so, our vitamin D genes as a society, as a human population, have become more and more mutated to the point where we don't absorb our vitamin D properly. We don't utilize our vitamin D properly. And so this is another reason why we see so much chronic illness rising, because vitamin D is not just a vitamin, it's a steroid hormone. And there are vitamin D receptors on every single cell in your body that we know of. And you must have enough vitamin D in order to be a healthy, happy human being and to not have chronic illness. Most of us are operating at levels of vitamin D that are way too low because our genetic variation has been damaged. Okay. But once you learn that there is a genetic variation, then what do you do to fix it? It's not hard. You make sure you get good sunlight. You make sure that you eat mushrooms. You make sure that you take extra vitamin D, because your body doesn't do everything that it maybe needs to do for your vitamin D. How hard is that? And it only takes 2 or 3 months on average to get a person's vitamin D back up to a level where it should be, which is much higher than what conventional medicine says. But conventional medicine says that if your vitamin D level is at about 30, that you're normal. And what we know scientifically is, no, that's not true at all, that you really should have it between 60 and 80 for your cells to be functioning optimally. Okay. So there's a lot of corruption right there all by itself. But how easy is that to fix? It's not hard to take a vitamin D supplement. It's $10 a month.
You're absolutely right. I think so too. But looking at another side of it, when people have, and I think you went through it too, and I did too, and a lot of my clients have as well, when they go through this horrible health crisis and they try all these different things, they often become bankrupt with things that don't work. And after a while, they don't have any money, any resources. Some of them become almost homeless because they're just exhausted and they can't work properly or at all because they're so sick. And at that point, what I want to urge the viewers is that just still don't lose hope, even if it seems like even getting a vitamin D is too expensive, even $10 a month is too much. You have to turn to God. I mean, that's your breaking point. This is it. This is where this was the insight you were led to. This is what you're supposed to get out of this experience. If you're going to get something positive out of it, is to realize that you got to turn to God, because it was always God who was going to heal you. It was never going to be those meds and those doctors. And you will attract the money and bring in the people, like Dory brought in the friend.
Yes.
And you'll bring in resources and people who will give you exactly the kind of help that you need, that they just have available. They'll just be able to give it to you. It's not going to kill them to give it to you. They're going to be happy to give it to you. Or somebody will donate, or like I have a friend who's now getting donations just from people online that pray for him. It's like he didn't even expect that, and people are happy to give when they can. So what goes around comes around, and but you got to start to have some prayer life, some personal connection with your higher power, and you will be helped. So don't think like
Yes.
there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There is, but you got to turn to God, right? And that's why we do all this, because we were helped by God. That's why we're still here to fight in this battle, right? So
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I want to tell you a story about that I actually have several stories like that, but um where whenever you feel limited in any area of your life, whether it's finances, whether it's relationships, whether it's health, absolutely turn to the Lord, because he is absolutely unlimited. He can bring any change into your life. But I always go back to that story of Joseph. In the Bible, the story of Joseph, he was a righteous kid. He was blessed by God with intelligence, with special gifts. His brothers hated him. They were jealous of him because his dad, loved him more. Okay, there's a whole nother side of that. But the injustice that happened to him was part of his life plan. It was part of the way his life was supposed to go. It was designed to go that way by the Lord for a specific purpose. Okay. And so your health, your limitations, they're there to help you to grow. You're not just, worthless, or you've just got this terrible life or whatever. Those are just lies from evil. The trials and the tribulations that we go through, like Joseph went through, he was falsely accused. He was thrown into jail for 13 years. He did absolutely nothing wrong. He was a man of God. He was doing the right thing, yet he was totally abused by his family, totally abused by the system. But in the end, it all worked out. And why? Because he trusted the Lord throughout the entire process. Can you imagine being stuck in an Egyptian jail, in a dungeon for 13 years when you did nothing wrong? Yet he still trusted the Lord. Okay. And so bringing it back to that, my whole story, your whole story, they are evolving stories of how the Lord has brought us through some pretty incredible hardships, you know, maybe some true hell. Okay. But there is a purpose in it. And when the Lord says that everything that happens to you is for your good, he's not lying to you. So if you're going to believe the lie that you're just worthless, or you're just unhealable, or you'll never have enough money to do what you need to do, or any of those limitations in life, you are limiting yourself by those beliefs. Because the truth is something far greater. The truth is that you have a creator in heaven who absolutely adores you, who's watching every little detail of your life and is orchestrating it for your good. Even the most terrible tragedies, okay, they can be turned around for your good. And so believing that and trusting that, I think maybe that's our main purpose for even living on this earth with all this evil and all this craziness in the first place, is being able to get to that place where we're no longer limited, where we're trusting in the Lord to such an extent that we don't have worries or fears anymore. We're just walking through our days, loving the Lord, trusting that anything that happens is for our good. And eventually we're going to be in heaven and it's all going to be good. We can look back and go, we can look back and go, okay, that's why that happened, you know?
right, and I think that's the big difference between people who do succumb, is they either don't have the trust or the faith, or they're weak-minded or whatever, they don't continue to fight. You have to just keep fighting, but with faith and with love, to move forward. And you know, there has to be a big why. There has to be a big why as to why you're doing all this. If someone doesn't have a strong why, then why fight so hard? Why work so hard? And I
Yeah.
think that's for every person individually. It's like a fingerprint. You have to define for yourself, what is your unique why? Why are you doing all this? It has to
Yeah.
be, it has to be a worthy why. For
Yeah.
you, initially was your granddaughter, but then it became much bigger. You wanted to stay alive for your granddaughter, but then you realize there's a
Yeah.
lot more to all this. You can help a lot
There
of
was way more. There was way more to it. And one of those little stories that the Lord helped me with along the way was um, there was a time in my illness when, okay, I'm living on Social Security disability. I'm alone raising my granddaughter. I mean, we're living on food stamps and about $1,300 a month, right? Which is nothing living in San Diego. I mean, and so we were just as broke as you can possibly be. There was a point where we didn't have enough toilet paper. I didn't have deodorant. I didn't have basic needs in the house, and there was no money left. And I said to the Lord, I said, okay, I've got just enough money for rent. That's all I've got. But we need toilet paper. Right? I've got to go to the store. And so I said, okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to go down to Kmart and I'm just going to get only what we absolutely need, just a little bit of toilet paper, one deodorant, something, Janice needs, right? Just the basics. And that's all I'm going to spend. And I'm going to trust you to bring it back to me. This is a wild story. It's absolutely true. I was coming back from the Kmart trip. I had spent $70, $69 and some odd cents. Okay. And I stopped at the post office to get my mail. In my mail was a card from a friend of mine at church, which was not even a close friend, just an acquaintance at Bible study. Days before, she had mailed this card with a check for $70 in it. And she said the Lord told her to send it. And she knew that the Lord told her to send it. And there it was. And it's still, as I'm telling you the story, it's given me the heart, and I got the chills because the how else can you explain that except that the Lord is watching even that little $70 that I needed so I could pay my rent, you know?
That's right. And and another thing that I realize sometimes when we don't have a lot of money, it's not always this way. So don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's because if we had it, we would spend it incorrectly. And what we need to do is go inside. It's a time where we really gotta introspect with what has caused us to be in the position we're in. And if we had a lot of money, we'd be shopping and eating ourselves to death and wasting it and living a life that's not worthwhile our talents and gifts. So sometimes when we're put into a kind of a hermitage type of state, it's ultimately so we can spiritually grow. That's what I
Mm,
realized. So don't think that you're abandoned by God or anything like that. Sometimes it's ups and downs, right? It's ups and downs. That's life. If it was all straight, that's death, right? This is death. This is life, right? So
right.
so let me ask you this. So Dory, you know so much. There's a lot of knowledge that you've had with everything that you learned. But what are the main things that you help your clients with? What kind of problems do you help them solve? Do you focus mainly on helping them with autoimmune conditions, or what other things do you help them with?
Yeah. So health across the board. So I'm an immunotoxicologist and an autoimmune disease specialist. So I know a lot about those areas, but really, health is health. When you get down to the bottom line root causes at the genetic and the cellular level, you can heal just about anything to an extent, right? And so, really, any chronic symptoms that people have, once you get down to that, once you do a good genetics test and you see all those different areas that you can take control of, that's huge. That's fundamental. And everyone really needs to start there. Then you need to do the testing that looks to see what your cells are missing, right? And then you start putting back in those nutrients, those lifestyle practices, those fundamental things that your cells are missing. Okay. That brings you up to another level of feeling better. Then you have to look at all the different toxins, because all those different toxins, they are really the main reason why people have high inflammation in the first place, is all the toxins that we're exposed to. And while we could never live in a perfect environment where we're never exposed to anything, we can empty our buckets, so to speak. I always talk about people having a toxin bucket. And if your bucket is filled and overflowing, okay, you're going to be sick. That's bottom line science. That's basic medical science. The more toxins you have in the body, the more you are not going to feel good. The less toxins you have in the body, the easier your cells have it. And, the less your immune system has to work. Okay. And so finding those toxins first, those are, basic root causes. Finding them, which the tests are readily available scientifically. Your doctor usually doesn't use those tests, but scientists do. And so we can order those tests for you. We can find your toxins, help you to remove most of them. Okay. That's how you're going to get better and better as you start removing those toxins.
And by the way, I
Right.
have to add here for people regarding the tests, because they really don't know the depth of these tests. Because I've done them, and I've done them with you and other holistic doctors. They are in depth. And I've done,
They're incredible.
when I used to go to regular conventional doctors, they would do a very basic test. Oh, you're fine, you're fine. I was always fine, but I wasn't feeling fine. So when I
But you
went,
work fine.
and I was definitely not. So when I got these holistic tests, it's like night and day. It's like that picture of day and night. It's
Yes.
the level of the depth of information that's actually scientific is incredible.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what people need to understand, that you're getting much deeper, more precise science that's going to help you to understand the root cause.
Yes. And the root cause at the genetic and the cellular level, which is where it's all about. Okay. You don't want to be working at the symptom level, like your pharmaceuticals are just helping your symptoms to feel better. They're actually destroying your cellular function at the same time. You don't want to do that because you're just making yourself worse. Okay. It's just a band-aid. It's not really doing anything about the underlying root cause. But when you're working at the genetic level, and you're working at the cellular level, and you're giving your cells back everything that they need, that they're missing. And then you're also removing those toxins that are impeding optimal health. All of a sudden, wow, now you're having excellent cellular regeneration. Now you're actually creating cells that are operating at a much higher level. Now your organs are actually regenerating. Now your brain is working better. Now your hormones are working better. Now everything gets better, right? You start having lower and lower inflammation. You feel better. Your whole life changes, right? And
Right.
so this is how we're healing.
Exactly. And I want to add here, because a lot of my listeners on my channel are spiritual. They're motivated by spiritual causes. So what I want to say is, yes, the body's more healthy, and that's very important. You feel better. But what's really also important is, when the body is more healthy, you can be a better
Yes.
cleansed vessel for the spirituality that
Yes.
where you can experience
Yes.
sacredness better and more, and you can bring in more of that sacred energy into the world. And that, because that's what a lot of my clients want. They want to be more spiritual. And
Yeah.
so, and that link between when your body and your mind is more healthy, then also you're more spiritual. That's really important. And they're not getting
Yes.
organized religion. It's not telling them, they're getting cupcakes and donuts, and, when they go to the different churches, and it's like, okay, they got to replace it with like healthy, sprouts or something.
Yeah, this is what I really I see a huge disconnect, especially in Christianity. Okay. And I'm a born again Christian, and Jesus is my everything. Okay. But when you look at the lack of knowledge when it comes to your physical health, right? We should be taking, as spiritual beings, we should be following, the discipline that the Lord created us with in order to take care of the cells in our bodies, right? Isn't it highly irresponsible for us to just eat donuts and macaroni and cheese all day? I
Yeah,
mean, because
it's like people treat themselves like a trash can, that they just think they can stuff
yes,
themselves and think they're going to be divine. No, it doesn't work like that.
yes. And so, and that doesn't mean now, this is not about perfection, right? That doesn't mean that once in a while, if you want to go out to a nice meal and, and you just want to like, eat a bunch of really trashy Mexican food and drink a margarita or two, that doesn't mean that you can't do that once in a while, okay? That can be fine. But if you're living your daily life that way, if you're living your daily life with nothing but you think it's healthy food because you're eating yogurt and granola for breakfast, but it's trash. It's causing cellular damage when you should be eating maybe a good, healthy, you know, um, a wild caught piece of fish for breakfast and a nice salad and maybe drinking a smoothie that's got some awesome berries in it and some healthy oils and right
Yeah, it's
when
about
when that's what your cells really want,
that's
then
right.
you
It's
can
about
be
the defaults. Like, what is your default? Is it healthy or unhealthy? Because you will sometimes
right.
fall off the default, but when you come back to it, do you have a healthy system to go back to? Right? That's
Exactly. And are you being a good steward of the body that the Lord gave you in order to operate here on this earth for these 80 or 100 years that He gave us here? Because it's just a short time we're here. You know, that we're here to learn some lessons and to grow. Then we're
that's
going
right.
to be on a higher plane.
And
Okay.
you
Then
know,
we're going to be in a different place.
that's right. Sorry, not to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask you a really important question because I'm really into fitness and I've gotten into MMA and all this stuff. Not so much bodybuilding, but like so not into perfection, but I'm a little bit into perfection where I'm really trying to optimize my fitness. And I honestly am to this day shocked how many professional athletes eat garbage and
Yes.
how they have to be really damaged by it before they turn holistic. Sometimes they already retire from their career before they turn holistic. Like I made a video a little while ago about Georges St. Pierre, how he's supposed to be the greatest of all time MMA fighter. He's awesome, and he's like a really good soul. You can just tell he's a good spirit. But he was at some point, so he had colitis, ulcerative colitis. He was bleeding out of his body right before a fight. He still went into the fight and he won the fight. But it's like that, even that wasn't really a wake up call. Not fully. Yeah, he then went, got a diagnosis. Yeah, he then changed some things, but he still eats sugar. He still eats like pasta because he's like, he likes it. But it's, it takes a long time but yet he has, his physique looks so good, but yet he was sick. And a lot of athletes have that problem. I noticed they're
Mhm.
actually very sick, but they look good, and so they think, well, if I look good, I must be good. But yet I'm
Mm-mm.
bleeding. I have headaches. I don't sleep well, and some of them drink a lot,
Mhm.
and the alcohol just destroys their spirit, and
Yes.
they're full of dark force energies, but they got a six pack. And I just, and there is that big disconnect there too, where on one hand they're
Huge.
taking out the trash. The mystics say take out the trash. That's like the negative attachments. They're taking them out with the physical fitness, but they're not going far enough. They're not really
Right.
their act to the degree that they should, and
Yeah.
right, and only some do when they get older. They realize, oh yeah, I really got to
Yeah.
take body, like I'm falling apart now. you know.
Yeah, there's still a level, it goes back, we're taking the conversation back full circle. There is still a level where people are being deceived. They're being deceived. They're not understanding that there is a bigger truth and that they have to be willing to open their brains enough and learn something more. Because you're right, it's not enough that we just have Jesus, but we can come to church and eat donuts, and every potluck has nothing but junk. Okay, it's not enough. You're missing and you're being deceived by a whole other level that you could be on a higher plane. You could be happier. You could be healthier. You could be more whole. You could be living more at the level where the Lord created you to live. But you're being deceived and limited and held back by mindset issues by thinking, well, I'm going to die anyway. I might as well eat my donut. Okay.
Or they just
Right. Or I like macaroni and cheese. I should be able to eat
or
it
they
as
just
much
don't
as I
know.
want to.
Like
They don't know.
I was listening to David Goggins' book recently, and he's an amazing person. Don't get me wrong. I admire him and respect him a lot. He was a Navy SEAL, but he just destroyed his body. And he talks about how he would prepare to run a marathon. He would get a Gatorade and a box of donuts and just eat the entire box of donuts before he. And I'm like, and yet he would do pretty well. But then he destroyed his knees. He would like bleed out of his body, go to the ER. I'm like, why? Why do you need to do it like that? You don't need to actually. I mean, I know your heart.
Yeah, it's a way that he limited himself with
Right.
because he didn't have the knowledge that he needed in order to live on that higher level.
That's
He
right. And
was
I think
deceived.
a part of it is like, oh, but I'm hardcore. I can handle it. Yeah, but you don't need to handle killing yourself on purpose when
No, you don't. It's a
and
deceit. It's a
that's right.
deceit that you think that's okay.
And a lot of these athletes who just so hardcore, who drive their bodies so hard and don't really replenish properly, in their
Mm,
40s, they can't help it. They have such serious health problems. They have to get knee replacements, hip replacements in their 40s. It's like, but if you did it right, you maybe would have never had to have knee surgeries and replacements if you did it,
right,
you know?
right. And so that's why it's so important to continue learning, and that's the spiritual battle. And I know we're coming up against a hard.
You got to go soon. Well,
I
hopefully,
do. I have to go in like 1 minute. I've got another
hopefully,
appointment,
well,
but
thank you so much, Dorinda.
bringing it back full circle, it's like bringing it to that place of um, let's be willing to learn everything that we can and live on that higher level, right? And be as healthy as we can. So we
That's
can just
right.
get everything out of this life that God created us for.
That's right. Dory, thank you so much for being on. I hope we can have more
Thank you.
conversations in the future and go deeper
Yeah.
into some of the things that I know you want to go into, like the deeper aspects of maybe the spiritual battle or the deeper aspects of what the health and disease and your model, if you would like to talk about that. But again, thank you so much for being on. I think people are going to get a lot out of this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I love doing this, and definitely I want to do it again.
Okay, great. All right, well, have an amazing weekend and I'll talk to you
You
later.
too.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Dorinda Smith. If you like this kind of content, please like the video, subscribe, comment with your questions. I'll take the best of the questions and I might even answer those in a separate video. And as far as I know, Dory is taking on new clients for online coaching programs. I'm going to put the link to her website in the description. I'm also taking on new clients for my holistic health and fitness coaching programs, all of which are online at this time, so you can be anywhere in the world to participate. And if you like this kind of conversation, check out the rest of the playlist in the Spirit Warrior Wisdom podcast. There are some very interesting conversations. I started the podcast just because I love talking about these subjects, and I just like to have conversations with interesting people. These videos on this podcast are getting a lot of views, a lot more than the other stuff. So clearly, people are enjoying the things that I'm interested in too. So this is good. But I wish you guys would comment more in the comments and tell me specifically what interests you, what you like, what is keeping your attention regarding the videos, and then I can interview more of the type of people that interest you. So check out also a couple of videos that I made in the past where I talk about athletes who got very sick despite their high level athletic performance and the holistic solutions to what ails them that are also preventative for any future issues. The first video is titled 20 Top Supplements for Athletic Performance in 2024 and how George St. Pierre went holistic. And the other video is titled Gordon Ryan Terribly Sick, Holistic Solutions for Sport Performance and Injuries That Don't Kill You. George St. Pierre is the greatest of all time in mixed martial arts, MMA, in case you did not know. And Gordon Ryan is the greatest of all time in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But no matter what sport you're in, you need these holistic modalities. If you want longevity and you want to stay healthy for the long term, not just short-term performance and short-term gains, So if you don't want to be getting knee and hip replacements in your 40s, like David Goggins had to get knee replacements in his 40s because he ran so many marathons and didn't really properly replenish himself, contact me to schedule your free 15-minute call. You can share what issues you are dealing with that you need help with, and I can tell you how my programs can help you to achieve your health and fitness goals. Stay blessed, not stressed.